Welcome to Out with Dan, the podcast that spotlights and examines the voices of LGBTQ+ authors, characters, and our allies. Together, we lift our voices and we tell our stories. I'm Dan White. Join me as I chat with this week's author. Hello and welcome back to Out with Dan. Today I'm excited to talk to John Fram, writing as Jack Friday, about his new novel, Killer Vibes. And welcome, John. How are you?
I'm doing great. So good to be here.
Oh, thank you. I'm glad you're here too. So this book starts with a bang, sort of tongue-in-cheek metaphorically. You want to give the audience an overview of what Killer Vibes is about?
Yeah, sure. So it's about a bisexual stoner named Peter Key, who's 29, and he's sort of frittered away his 20s. And he's about to be homeless. He's made some really dumb decisions with the people he's living with. And right as he's on, kind of the last possible minute, he gets a reprieve when an attorney shows up at this garage that Peter's staying at and tells Peter that he's inherited a house in Austin, Texas. And then a really nice neighborhood too, a very good part of town. So Peter's now in this weird space where he's on paper worth a lot of money, but he has to sell the house if he wants any of it. And he's not sure he wants to do that because he starts to worry that his uncle's death might not have been an accident. And so over the course of the novel, he finds, a big bag of money and he gets in a lot of trouble and pisses off some really dangerous people. But by the end of it, he's realized he's actually good at something, and that's solving trouble, solving mysteries, and getting out alive in one piece. So he becomes a private detective by the end of the story.
I love it. And I love the fact that he is, as he self-proclaimed, laziest detective in town. I love that.
He's the laziest private detective in Texas.
I love that. So he has not a troubled past, I wouldn't say. I mean, I think he doesn't have the greatest of relationships with his recently departed mom.
Mm-hmm.
So talk about a little bit about family dynamic and why you wanted to bring that in as an author.
I think that for me, whenever I'm starting to work on a character, it's really important to understand, I'm not Freud, but I do think that a lot of our kind of life is set in those early couple years. And it's very useful as an author to kind of ask yourself, how was their relationship with their mother? How was their relationship with their father? And so I knew with Peter, he was a really talented guy. He wasn't a very ambitious guy. And I'm always curious when I meet people like that. And I realized in Peter's case, it was probably because his mom never really supported him. He never had someone telling him, you can do this. And that's not to forgive bad behavior, but it did help to understand some of the problems that he's had along the way. And then I think if you're a decent novelist, you're going to take that initial premise and just ask yourself, well, how did that affect him through the rest of his life? How did that relationship with his mom shake out? And then finally, when I got into my 30s, my friends started losing their parents. When you're a kid, you think that they're just going to be around forever, for better and for worse. And then several of my friends over a couple years lost fathers and mothers. And it was really interesting. And I lost a very, very dear friend, like very suddenly. And it was just that moment where you're like, what do? You got to keep going. And so for Peter, it was a huge blow to him because he thought that he had all the time in the world to get over this argument. He and his mom were always fighting about something. And he thought he had all the time in the world to settle it. And then now he's realized he hasn't. It all goes to me into the fact that we're watching over the course of this novel, you're really watching a kid become a man, I think, in his own way.
Yes, he certainly develops. I mean, he has a wonderful arc in the book, from where he starts off couch surfing to where he ends up. I mean, he's a well-to-do man by the end of the book.
Yeah, exactly. He's a man of means. He owns a house in a very nice neighborhood. He's got some money. And he has a career. He's found something. He's lucky enough to found something that he's a little scared of it by the end of the book. But I think we all know he's going to go back to private detecting.
Yes. And, so we get a lot of surprises and twists and turns in this book, which I think you've done very well at navigating, which, I love a surprise. I love to be surprised at something I'm reading. I love for it to take turns that I didn't see coming. And I think you did that very well. And also added in some humor along the way.
Thank you. Yeah, humor was very important for me. I knew that this was, as soon as I heard Peter's voice in my head, I knew it was going to be a funny novel.
Yeah, yeah. It is. And I love the Burnet's. Oh, I know I'm going to mess it up because I have an uncle named Burness that's spelled like Bernice. So his name is Brennance, that rhymes with penance. Is that right?
Yeah, Brennan's. Yeah, Arthur Brennan's the attorney. Yep.
Oh, there was something creepy about that dude from the beginning, or I knew he wasn't telling all the story to tell.
Exactly. That was a fun thing to figure out how to do, because all of my other books are written with multiple points of view. So you're able to bounce around and build suspense for the reader, because you'll see something happening around the corner, so to speak. So you're following one guy,
right.
And then you see trouble brewing around the corner. With this, a book that was totally set in first person, I was like, I had to learn a lot of tricks and kind of grow as a writer to figure out how do you build suspense when it's all being told straight from one perspective. And Brennan's was an example of that. How do you make the reader know? A savvy reader is going to pick up that he's not telling the truth. You know what I mean?
Well, I mean, I didn't know what he wasn't telling. I just knew he wasn't telling all of it, just because,
exactly.
Peter had some very simple questions that he wanted to avoid answering. And I think if you're an attorney and you're avoiding answering a potential client's questions, there's a problem there.
Exactly. It might be a conflict of interest or two.
Right, precisely. And as we learned in this book, there was several conflicts of interest.
Precisely. It's a lot trickier than you think it's going to be.
Yeah, it is. But so well done. So what about the fraternal order did you want to slay, so to speak?
That's so interesting. You mean the fraternity that's in the book?
Yes.
Yeah.
So, all right, John, I should say, were you blackballed in college for a fraternity?
That's funny. I never really had a proper college experience. I dropped out pretty young to be a novelist.
Okay.
So, and I was always going to community college. There wasn't really a Greek life culture there. But in Austin, there's a huge Greek culture. It's really, really big here. And this sounds bad. I think your listeners will understand, though. You meet a lot of people on the grid, so to speak, on the apps, and you run into some of these frat guys, and they're just always characters. It's fascinated me how strange some of these men were. And Peter discovers that there is a secretive fraternity at the University in Texas that's got they've got some bad dealings going on. And it just struck me as kind of a logical next step, because some of these guys seem like kind of sociopaths. And I was like, God, I can't imagine what a room full of you guys would look like.
Well, I tell you, I had one roommate in college that he rushed a fraternity or two and asked me if I would go with him, just sort of as a wingman. And I did see one of the fraternities he rushed. I did see that there was such a tight network of guys, and it was Kappa Alpha, which at that time in the early 80s was highly racist. I mean, they supported the Confederacy, the whole 9 yards. Now I understand Kappa Alpha is actually integrated, which I love to hear that. But I was like, wow. I mean, I just remember how very fixated everyone was at 18 and 19 on resurrecting the South. And I'm like, jeepers creepers, this is crazy. However, there are people of the like mind, they flock together.
Yeah, no, and I think that it's funny you mentioned the fraternity, because I find them very unsettling. I found them one of the creepier elements of the book, because I feel like it's so easy to... I'm really interested in power. You know what I mean? Like, this is a book that tries to wear its themes kind of lightly. It's not like trying to beat you over the head with anything. But one of the overwhelming themes that kept coming up as I was writing it was power and money. The way that people wield influence over people who are poorer or weaker than them. And this fraternity for me feels like the embodiment of a group of powerful people accumulating more of it for themselves.
Well, and I think that is oftentimes what power does. I had a client that was really, really uber wealthy one time, and it was during the Bush years when President Bush was talking about doing some tax cuts for the uber wealthy, and he was all for it. He's like, "Yes, because we create jobs." And I looked at him and I said, "Jack, I'm the only person you've hired in the last 20 years. What job did you create ever? You just built a
Ever.
corporation to leave your sons. That's all. You didn't hire people." But they always delude themselves into believing that they do all these wonderful things for everyone. Now, some rich people really are great. They do lift up people. They do build jobs for people. I don't. Not all wealthy and powerful people are corrupt. They're not. But there are enough of them that when we read about them, we sort of smell something's off.
Yeah, exactly. And it's a constant theme of private detective fiction. I wanted, again, to write a book that wears its influences and its themes lightly, but I did go back and read a lot of the old PI fiction from, Dashiell Hammett and then up into the more contemporary, like John MacDonald and Sue Grafton and all of those. And it is this overriding theme of the genre is when you start poking and prodding at society, you do have a bad habit of finding a corrupt rich person somewhere in there. It seems sort of endemic to American culture. You know what I mean?
I do indeed. I think it was par for the course, really. So, describe Grady and his relationship with Peter.
Yeah, so there's a character named Grady Bernays in the book, and he's an actual private detective. He's a real deal, kind of grizzled, old school. It's left ambiguous where he got started, but he's definitely got a past. But he's very good at his job. And part of why Grady was in the book was just a utilitarian purpose, because I needed Peter to have access to the database tools that you can only really get if you're a licensed detective. And I knew that Peter had no way of getting those on his own. And so I wanted to introduce a PI, but I also wanted to give Peter a way. I didn't know how he was going to do it, but I knew by the end of the book, Peter was going to be a private detective, and it made sense that he would go and work for one. So Grady has been hired by somebody in Peter's life to get him out of this mess. And Peter is able to convince Grady that it'd actually be smarter just to hire Peter to work for him. And then they can figure this thing out together rather than Grady charge his client all this money when Peter's going to keep investigating this either way. So
Right.
Grady also, one of the big themes to me, one of the big questions I had going into the book was it comes back to an interview that Walter Mosley did, the great crime writer Walter Mosley. And he talked about how when he got going, there weren't really Black heroes, or at least not like Black male heroes in genre fiction. And he wanted to do something about that. He wanted to write a good book, but it was in his mind that there wasn't a hero that looked like him. And it struck me so hard because I was like, well, who are the queer heroes and who are the millennial heroes? I can't really think of many members of my generation that I would call if I was in trouble, so to speak, or that I would kind of idolize is a strong word, but there is something very important, I think, about admiring a hero, having if not a role model, at least this sort of paragon or somebody who's just a little bit larger than life. I find that really exciting, and I wanted it for the millennial generation. I wanted one for our times. I also knew I could have a lot of fun if I put my millennial up against someone a little bit older, like in the boomer generation, because there's always some of my best friends have been older than me, like even substantially older than me, but there are these amazing moments where sparks will fly or you'll just be talking completely at cross purposes. And it's so much fun to do that in fiction. It's just a great fictional dynamic between two characters.
It is great in fiction. It's not always so great in real life, though, John, just so we're clear,
No, absolutely not. I've had some very uncomfortable conversations. Yeah.
Right. Sometimes I have to scratch my head thinking, what in the hell are they talking about? I just don't get this. Or, I talk about the Brady Bunch and they're like, who, or Little House on the Prairie. And I'm like, really? Oh, my God. You didn't see that every afternoon after school like I did?
Well, and it's happening to me now because I have, Gen Z friends who will send me a meme or something, and I'll just be like, I'm looking at hieroglyphics. Like, I need a Rosetta Stone to decode this.
Right. And I tell you, the internet, Google is my friend because I'm like, I don't understand that acronym at all, but Google does.
Google's got your back.
Somebody
Absolutely.
on the internet does. So I'm like, okay. It does indeed. It does indeed. And I think that's something that you utilize really well in the fact that younger people, or I'm a baby boomer, and I'm good at the internet, but younger people are excellent at it because you were raised with it. So that, so
Oh gosh.
yeah. So how about LaCheryl? I liked her a lot. She was fun. Did you enjoy writing her?
I love LaCheryl. LaCheryl was one of those characters because this book, I didn't really outline it that heavily in advance. I just wanted to
Okay.
get in there and walk around and just see what I found. And so I knew that Peter had to meet, there needed to be a receptionist at this office. And it was one of those magical days that you get as a writer every now and then where a character leaps off the page. And that was LaCheryl. She's just this sassy, you get the feeling she probably smoked a lot at one point. She's just very kind of tough as nails lady, who gets the job done brutally well. And as soon as she showed up, I just was. I think it's dangerous to enjoy your work too much, but when I write LaCheryl, I always laugh. It's hard not to.
Well, I do know that you have a contract to write. Is it two more of these? Is that right?
Three more. Yeah, we got three
Three
more
more.
coming.
Oh, pardon me. Excuse me. Oh, is that what you're working on next?
It is, yeah. I'm working on that, and I am still working on a John Fram, horror novel as well. Like I write, supernatural thrillers under my real name, and then I've started doing these under this pen name to kind of keep everything separated. And I've been working on a new John Fram book. It is really hard to write a book and a half a year, let me tell you. I'm very blessed that I don't have a job right now, but this is starting to feel like a job. So it's been interesting to juggle two books at one time.
Well, and hopefully this is fulfilling enough that it can be a job and not be a pain in the ass. So,
There are days, it's funny. I was talking about this with somebody, a bookseller who's working on her first book, and she really wants to do it as a career. She really takes it seriously. And I was supportive of that 100%. But I also was like, it comes with its own BS. You know what I mean? Anytime you get into an industry, there's going to be sides of it that you're like, my God, this is so tedious or so, frustrating. So it's weird. But then when you zoom out, you're like, my God, I get to tell stories for a living. Like, what an incredible blessing that is.
I agree with you. And I'm just so excited that Peter's coming back into our world. And I'm also looking forward to the next John Fram book as well, because you are a wonderful horror writer.
Thank you.
And now an accomplished PI writer. Congratulations.
Thank you. Yeah, the new book is coming out next June, June of 2027. And we're going to do a big cover and title reveal here actually very soon. It's
Okay.
great to have. It's a whole assembly line at this point. We got a million of these things coming.
That's good. I like it. I like it. Well, hurry back, and you're welcome back anytime.
Thank you so much. It's been my pleasure.
Thanks, John. Hang on for me just a second.
Thank you for joining me for this week's episode of Out with Dan. You can find more information about this podcast and its host at outwithdan.com, on Twitter at OutWithDan, and on Instagram and Facebook at GoOutWithDan. This podcast is hosted by Authors on the Air Global Radio Network, and the theme music is provided by bensound.com. Join us again soon for the next episode of Out with Dan.